Maybe jumping back a little bit, because you prompted a thought there, Will, with what you were saying, and Rory, with one of your questions before about how to get the team involved. One of the things I've noticed is now the average age of a business owner is 31 years old. That's nuts. It makes me feel very old for starters. The average age of a business owner is 31 years old. And the vast majority of staff within any firm now, generalization of course, but vast majority of staff in firms are under the age of 40. Now, if you take those two things together, that's interesting. That means most of the business owners, the average that we're talking to, not necessarily a firm's client base, but the average, and also who they will probably be attracting as their next customers, are of that age. So what type of people are they? How are they operating? What is culturally relevant to them now? And when you look at the staff base, even if, because I'm not sure what it was 15 years ago, but even if 15 years ago, most people in a firm were under the age of 40, they were of that time. Whereas the people who are under the age of 40 in a...
Welcome to AFO Wealth Management Forward, a podcast about finance, accounting, technology, and entrepreneurship. We apply our decades worth of experience and insight into what makes businesses work, so we can help others grow both personally and professionally. In this ever-evolving marketplace, we help accounting firms and financial advisors grow their practice through the adoption of holistic wealth management services. Learn from industry leaders and subject matter experts to unlock the secrets of their success. A podcast that shows people and companies the transformative power of technology so they don't fear it, but instead harness it. Don't fight the robots, team up with them. And here are your hosts, Rory Henry, Director of Business Development, and CEO Rob Santos of Arrowroot Family Office.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm again joined by guest co-host Will Hill from Will Hill Consults. Will, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Rory, how are you?
I'm doing great. So I am doing a special video for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. I'm doing a reenactment of their friendship and courtship. And I have an actress who's on the show Vikings. So I'm making my actorial debut. It may go well, it may not go well, but it's something I want to do for my parents.
Well, that's the first thing I thought of was I know someone who used to do Civil War reenactments, but this is probably a little different than that. I don't know if you're going to have like someone dying in the middle of this or what. But
no, but I have to get bell bottoms because it's UCLA in the 1970s. So I got to get a wig, a mustache, and some 70s outfits.
Yeah, well, you don't have to contend with existing hair for the wig, right? I hear that's more itchy. So you should be better there.
Cool. All right. Well, let's introduce our guest today. He is the commercial director at MyFirmsApps and the founder of PracticeWin. He's been involved in the accounting profession since 1998. Over that time, he's helped thousands of firms around the world generate new revenue, improve their marketing, grow their firms, and embrace technology. So without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed guest, Dan Richards. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rory. Great to be here. Thanks. Hi, Will.
All right. Thanks for joining us. So as we always do on the show to get started, can you give our audience a little bit of background on yourself and what you do at MyFirmsApp and PracticeWin?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So as you say, I've been doing this for 20-something years now, working with the profession, which has been really exciting. Odd word to use, perhaps, but certainly has been exciting. There's been lots of different things go on. When we first got involved, it was, here in the UK at least, it was illegal to promote an accounting firm. And so once that first became allowable, we made the first telephone calls and generated appointments. We did fax marketing. We did all sorts of things. Then, of course, email became a thing. So we got involved in email, and then websites became a thing. We got involved in those and social media. And then in 2012, we were kind of thinking, well, what next? And one of our team, our CEO at the time, Joel Oliver, he said, well, let's build an app. And most of the rest of us around the table went, that's a daft idea. He said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And so he went off and built the first version of MyFirmsApp, and we've had to eat our words many times ever since. It's been a big learning curve, and there are now firms across the world using it throughout the US and Canada, UK and Australia and Ireland, South Africa and other countries. And that digital relationship between the accountant and the client, and how that can help with the communication and the processing of data and the simplifying of what is now a very busy digital landscape for us all, isn't it? So it's been a big learning curve, and it's still one now.
Yeah, let's talk about the importance of that digital presence here, Dan. You know, the internet and social media allow you to create like that ecosystem to communicate with clients, to attract new clients, to motivate current employees, attract new employees. Can you kind of talk about the latest best practices in regards to creating that marketing ecosystem?
Yeah, I think we've been in almost nothing's quite full circle because we're always still learning and developing, aren't we? But there's been something of that going on where we kind of pendulum as human beings, don't we? So we go, okay, this is where we were. Suddenly there's this digital stuff. Quick, let's all jump across to this digital thing. And we kind of miss that balance point in the middle. And I think we're kind of just penduluming around the balance points at the moment, where it starts with, what does the firm want for themselves? And too often we're just gone, well, I have to do digital because it's digital, or I have to do this because it's this. Whereas we miss the moment where the firm goes, well, what's important to me? And what am I trying to build? And what's the engagement I want with my clients? And what type of people do I want working with me, if I want people working with me at all? And if we can get those sorts of questions answered, there's such great choices now with the technology because it's been so well refined and there's new stuff coming all the time. Then you can be much more precise with what you want and how you do things. And I think if firms can start there, and we can help firms start there, then it's then saying, well, a bit like building a house, which bit do I want to put in first? How do I get the foundations in, the cornerstones, the walls right? Do I just go for the sexy looking sun panels, solar panels on the roof first, with nothing underneath it, or do I build the thing out? And if I think I'm going to build in that direction, what sort of things can I put in place now that's going to make it easier for clients before we create Frankenstein's monster with too many digital things floating around and suddenly I don't know where to turn?
I'm glad you said that at the end, Dan. I think that's what I'm starting to hear from firms right now, saying, hey, we have so many tools. We've confused our clients and we've created too many avenues of interaction. And so some clients have more than one, they're confused. Some clients only have one, but it leaves the staff confused as to what kind of expectation do I set. Talk a little bit about some things a firm needs to consider when it comes to their client experience and how that weighs in on their choices, Dan.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, Will, because that's on both sides of that coin that you painted. But if I start with the first one, which is where most people end up with, which is too much, then it's saying, well, what if I go back to my first part, what do I want as a firm? What type of firm do I want to build? Then that informs, well, what do I need to do with my clients? And so once they've got that clarity, they're not just choosing stuff because they've been sold it or because someone else is doing it, etc. They're choosing stuff intentionally. And if you're more intentional with it, it tends to be less disparate. Not always, but tends to be. And then I would also start to say, well, what can I do that consolidates from the start? So, for example, one of the things that the MyFirmsApp does is it creates one app for the client to use with the firm. So it's the firm's branded app, and they can put whatever they want inside it. We've got a bunch of things that we know are good, but the firm can customize within that. And so if today all they want to be able to do is to communicate through the app to their client and maybe give some content that's good, and then maybe give access to their online portal like a share file or a docket or something like that, then they can do that. But then they also know now that if they're going to do stuff in the future where, well, I'm going to add QBO, or I'm going to add Dext or HubDoc or something like that, then they can add these things into their app at the right time. And that means for the client, it's much simpler because they've still only got that one thing downloaded. They don't suddenly have to go here for this or there for that. All the firm needs to do is say, hey, Dan, we've got this now. We'd like you to use it this way, please. And they start to tell the client what to do rather than giving the client too much choice. And so that goes back to that intentionality again. Would you suggest a firm discovers for their clients if that's an issue? I know we could assume that it is, but how do we discover that it truly is? And I think it's important to understand the symptomology of the issue. So, hey, I need to discover my client's symptoms so that I can know what the issue is. And I have to position my solution against the symptoms that they're feeling when we go to tell the client what to do next. So talk a little bit about some things you'd say a firm could do to figure that out with their clients. I think there's probably two parts with that. One is the old Henry Ford story of, if I asked my customers what they want, they'd have given them, they'd have asked for faster horses, right? So the old innovation go-to. So there's that part. So the reason I go there is, often as firms, we ought to be braver with our clients. I'm a client of an accounting firm, and I've had a few accountants over the years. It always goes better when my accountant tells me what to do, rather than saying, hey, Dan, there's this thing here if you want to do it. Because it might be a brilliant idea, it might be really good for me, but I'm already doing what I'm doing, the way I'm doing it, or I'm already very busy, or I'm already thinking about what my family's up to. I'm not engaged in the thing in the way that the firm is, by going, this is here if you want it. Whereas when they turn around and say, Dan, we want you to work like this, and this is why it's good for you, it tends to just short circuit a lot of that discovery process that would have got to that same point anyway. Because I trust my accountant, I pay them because I trust them. They look after very sensitive financial data. It's all good. And perhaps the other side then, if there was a discovery process to go to the symptoms that you're touching on, it would be when we're in to ask better questions. So when we're in conversations with clients already, it's just to stop and talk a little bit. We often just deal with the matter at hand, don't we? Whereas if you step back and go, Dan, how are things at the moment? What can we be doing a little bit better for you? Very basic questions, but ones that are often in the busyness of life are missed. And then perhaps alongside that, we might say, well, if we did this and you work like that, how would you find it? Or, Dad, I've noticed we've been sending you 3 emails to get an answer every single time. Why do you find email so difficult? Oh, well, because I never use it. I'm only ever on my phone. Oh, okay, right. Well, what can we do to make that better? The other such things. And maybe another one would be to look internally, because if the firm is noticing lots of inefficiencies in itself, such as client managers having to contact clients multiple times to get answers, well, that tells me there's a symptom. So then they can start to be proactive about it. What can I do to resolve that symptom? Where am I getting results? When I phone a client, they answer. Okay, but I can't phone my clients all the time. When I email them, nothing happens. So maybe I need to change how I'm communicating there. Things like that.
Yeah, and my question, Dan, is how much do you weigh the systemization of interactions with the clients in contrast to the personalization on what they would communicate best with, whether it's phone, email? You stated that you want to direct clients to using some type of software or using a way of communication. How do you handle that balancing act between systemization and personalization per client?
Going back to the first question, what does the firm want to be doing? So if your firm is set up boutique, and by boutique, what I mean is we're going to have a very personal relationship, which means we hardly use anything other than telephone communication. We're going to meet people very often. We're going to deal with it almost like a concierge service, if I paint that kind of picture. Well, then you've got to charge for that as well. Yeah. Now, there are clients that want that type of service, right? And they're going to pay for it. But you need to charge for it. Otherwise, you have a hugely stressful, unprofitable firm. And that does nobody any good at all. But if what you're looking for example, there's a firm in the States called Complete Controller, run by a lady called Jennifer Brazer, really exceptional lady, wrote a book called From Cubicle to Cloud. So she's got quite a lot to talk about on this. And they've been on a massive journey, and we've been a part of that with them. They would do it where they say, well, we're a national firm, and we've got processes that we know deliver results. Now, we're going to have a really personal relationship with our clients along the way, but our processes make the thing work, and therefore we're going to enforce. We're going to make our clients nicely. No one's a nasty person with it, but we're going to make our clients work a certain way. And so they go to the systemization first, and then make sure you've got quality relationships that sit on top of it. So I think it goes back down to, how do you want to build your firm? It's one of those slightly unanswerables otherwise.
Dan, let me shift gears to an internal perspective. And I know as I talk to firm owners, one of the things they want to be cognizant of are, hey, when I go to sell this change internally, how do I get past my staff? Give me this. You were not prepared for this question, so let's see what happens. Give me maybe a couple surprise roadblocks that you've heard of staff putting up to these kind of changes. Like, we already know, hey, staff want to keep doing things the same way. They like to make a phone call. They don't want to, we've heard those. You got anything that's maybe a little bit out of left field for some firms they've had to overcome?
The reason you saw me smiling as you're asking the question is because if I had a really clean answer to that question, then our business would be doing even better than it is today. It's a massive one because there are personality types, right? And so if I speak with massive, sometimes unkind generalizations, the types of folks that make accountants are not necessarily people or want to be on that kind of customer service front edge. Massive generalization, often unkind. But if you've got folks within your team that are oriented that way, then let's see if they want to play to their strengths. So, just like you would do in any other business. And I suppose, actually, if I take a step back from that, it might be, first of all, let's see if we can encourage the CPAs at the top of these firms to run their practices as though they were commercial businesses and not an accounting practice. And that would be a pretty strong place to start, because then you start to say, well, who have I got on my team that wants to be like that? And if I don't have someone like that and I want that delivered, who do I recruit? And if I need to change the structure of my team over time, so be it. A quick example, I spoke to a firm in the UK 3-4 weeks ago now, down at the south of England. And I was speaking to the young lady who was opposite me on the camera. And I thought, this is just, I speak to so many firms, this is so different. Why? I want to talk to this person. Why am I feeling so engaged in this conversation? It's the first time we'd spoken. And I said, can you tell me a bit about your background? And it turns out she comes from the childcare profession. And so what they've done is they've hired someone who's front of house, who knows body language instinctively, who knows eye contact, who knows tone of voice, who asks questions. And she was drawing stuff out of me so fast. And I thought, that's really impressive. So she hasn't got a clue about the accounting side of the business, and she doesn't need to, because her part was this. And so I think, though, if we can go to those sorts of things to help team members move past, otherwise it becomes a little bit of, look, this is where we're taking the firm. You just got to move along with it, folks. And the one quick other story perhaps with that, in our business, we hire developers. And we employ developers, very talented people, really technical people. They very, very rarely, if ever, speak to a customer. So if you look at your firm and you've got people who are quality, great at their job, but they're not going to be on that front of house, or they're not going to engage the technology side, then see whether you can keep them doing the bit they're good at and fold other people in around them.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into my next question here, Dan. I sent over some information here on stats in regards to the AI CPA, which is forecasting, 3 out of 4 current CPAs will retire in the next 15 years. The number of CPA candidates here in the US is the lowest it's been in 10 years, I think. And then accounting professionals are now sitting less and less for the CPA exam. Are you seeing the same thing in the UK? And then how can we attract, more young professionals here? Do we have to look outside of that designation? Do we need to look to hire data scientists? We hire more sales and marketing people? Is that something that the profession is moving towards?
So the problem is the same here. The challenge is the same here in the UK, and generally around the world, as I see it, certainly in sort of more Western societies anyway. And it is a challenge. One very quick answer to it, and it's happening already, is consolidation. So the M&A activity is stepping up around that. And for those who are buying, there's some great opportunities, especially if they're going to fold in some real entrepreneurial people around the edges of it. How do we track the next group of people through? It's a really good question. If we could make the accounting profession or encourage the accounting profession to be a lot more business-like, and it goes a little bit to what we were just touching on there. The skills if you look at the really successful firms by most measures, profitability, EBITDA, systemization, the well-being of the staff inside the firm, the satisfaction scores, the scores from clients, the growth that they're on perhaps, and that sort of trajectory. They are ones where they are operating very commercially, and they've got sales and marketing people to do the sales and marketing job. and they've got front of house people to do that. And some of them even hire some internal technology people to make the technology stacks work better. And they don't have to be very large firms to do that. You can do that as a smaller firm. It's just structuring how you're doing things. But for the difference that CPAs and accountants can make to business owners to be focused on a lot more, because the positive difference is outstanding. A good CPA, a good accountant makes the world of difference. But very often, the professional bodies and the examining bodies for these people, they're not training people in the right way. They're just saying, here's how you complete this form. Here's how you do this. Here's the legislation you need to know. And it's the same old. And that part is just not moving fast enough. And if we can put a rocket behind that, we might attract some pretty smart young people in, especially with the work from anywhere world that we seem to be operating in now, because you can be an accountant anywhere around the world. You just got to deliver the outcome.
Yeah, and I also wonder, as we see the trend, and I'm assuming the trend is similar in the UK. So in the US, we have a little bit of trend of VC capital coming in, buying out parts of accounting firms or firms as a whole, because they see the opportunity to systematize, to work through, hey, there's more profit sitting there if we switch the org structure and the functioning. We just need the intellectual capital that these individuals have as CPAs and accountants to come in and play. And I think even if your firm out there listening says, I really don't want to be bought out, that's no of interest to me, the trend should still be of note, because what's going to happen is they're going to slowly, maybe quickly, shift the organizational structure of the assets that they're acquiring. And you're going to see it move to much more of a corporate standard with a lot of the outlines that you mentioned, Dan, that hey, we don't have to be huge to have our own tech folks doing things, right? That's not just reserved for the big boys and big ladies anymore, right? So that's available at any size. We just have to think about what role are we filling, and we go get the players to fill the roles, and don't try to have everyone be everything, right? That's the model that we're shifting to. And whether you're a large firm or small firm, it's simply a matter of quantity in each role, not the existence of the role or not. Those are two very different things. And I think in the US, for too long, we've looked at, I don't need that role because my firm is only X number of professional staff big. I think instead it should be, hey, because we're only X number of staff big, we have one person in that role, or it's a shared role. It's not that the role doesn't exist. And it's maybe a small mindset adjustment, but it's a big impact when we think about how we're going to operate the firm as a whole. It's not really a question baked in there, Dan, but I'll let you respond.
No, I love listening to it, because I'm nodding away enthusiastically. I agree. And even outsourcing. If you can't hire that person at the moment, there's so many smart people out there with the right experience, established businesses, or even just freelancers who've now left the firm that they have done some great stuff in, and they want to change their lifestyle. So great, hunt those people out. They're out there.
Yes, they
the
are.
VC and the private equity money is as much the same
remark.
as it is in the UK as well. And it's a trend that's continuing. I think some of the valuations are high, really high, but that's probably because there's smarter people involved than me. The time will tell. But I think some of the valuations are very high, and like these sorts of things, they'll settle down over time. And I think it will stimulate a real change in the market, because those people know how to drive a result on their money, and so that is going to happen. So it is worth taking note of. Maybe jumping back a little bit, because you prompted a thought there, Will, with what you were saying, and Rory, with one of your questions before about how to get the team involved. One of the things I've noticed is now the average age of a business owner is 31 years old. That's nuts. It makes me feel very old for starters. The average age of a business owner is 31 years old. And the vast majority of staff within any firm now, generalization, of course, but the vast majority of staff in firms are under the age of 40. Now, if you take those two things together, that's interesting. That means most of the business owners, the average that we're talking to, not necessarily a firm's client base, but the average, and also who they will probably be attracting as their next customers, are of that age. So what type of people are they? How are they operating? What is culturally relevant to them now? And when you look at the staff base, even if, because I'm not sure what it was 15 years ago, but even if 15 years ago, most people in a firm were under the age of 40, they were of that time. Whereas the people who are under the age of 40 in a firm today are the Gen Zs and the millennials. And again, generalization, but for the most part, culturally, those folk want to be involved and want to be included in things. And so if you've got them working for you, then don't just leave the education and the nurturing of your firm to the one or two people that get all the emails from whomever, or who attend the conferences and the webinars, or who just sit around a table and make choices together. Get your whole team involved, not because you need to create a messy democracy that nothing ever happens from, but because you want everyone to be educated and nurtured on it, and you can get a bit of a groundswell of, yeah, we can move further, faster in the direction that we want to do because we've got folks involved. Another example of that is very often someone at the firm makes a decision, but who gets to implement it hasn't got a Scooby-Doo what's been spoken about before, because that they haven't been on that journey. So if you can keep them, which is one of the things PracticeWin is all about, is trying to help educate and nurture everyone in the firm rather than just one or two people at the top, then when it comes to doing the onboarding, whoever they've chosen to onboard, then their staff are that bit further ahead, and it can be a lot more effective from there.
Dan, talk a little bit more about PracticeWin, because I've heard you talk about it, and I think it's a great concept. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what you're doing with that product?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So the idea here is a little bit like I was just touching on a moment ago. Every accounting firm everywhere has a similar challenge, which is one or two people. The buck stops with one or two people, even in large firms, for a certain aspect. And those one or two people are already exceedingly busy. And they're not normally specialists in that area. It's just a thing that they've also got to do. And so the idea that they look at stuff, read it, engage with it, do something about it, it very rarely happens. And on the occasions when it does, as I've just mentioned, you then go to implement, and everyone else in the firm doesn't know what's going on because they haven't been a part of the stuff that's led up to that moment. And on the flip side of it, from the industry that supports the profession, if you like, folks like you and I and many others, and the big guys and girls included, we have this other side of the challenge, which is all the thought leadership, all the educational content is all going to the same people who aren't reading the emails.
Right.
And so it's like, how do you bridge this gap? So the idea of PracticeWin is to sit in the middle of that. It's a free app for every single accountant, every single member of staff in every single accounting CPA firm anywhere. And they can download it. And it covers the 17, 18 key areas of running a firm, from recruitment and retention to marketing, sales, technology, tax, audit, payroll, client experience, and so on. And the idea is it has best in breed information within the app. So there's stuff that focuses on what do you need to be thinking about now and doing next about a certain subject matter. Let's take client experience, for example. So you can then look at that. So in your busyness of your normal day, you can just look at that short, specific, tactical information that helps. You've got stuff that says, here's some longer form articles about payroll, or moving to the cloud from desktop solutions, or recruiting people, or retaining talent. All that sort of stuff is in there. And you can personalize the feed. So if you, out of all of those, there's 3 or 4 or 5 that you most want to hear about, that's the stuff that's highlighted to you. And you can chat to the channel experts if you needed to, and all that sort of good stuff inside there. So our hope is, and it's looking good so far, that it will actually help within some of what we've been touching on today.
I love it. I love it. My next question here, Dan, is what do you think the top skills that accountants need to have here to be successful in the future?
I think those who are going to lead firms is to be business minded. It's not to be a technical accountant, it's to be business minded. That's not a new answer, and it's not a new conversation, but it's still the need. I think otherwise it's the human skills within firms. Let's free folks up. There's a lot of very talented, capable people out there who are better than me, far better than me, at looking at how I manage my tax affairs and how I produce the reports for my business. And if those people can be freed up to develop the human skills, so their conversational ability, their questioning, their listening, stuff that we would often, maybe the three of us might agree, you might call sales, but that's a dirty word for some reason within the profession. But it's, no one's trying to flog double glazing or a new conservatory or timeshare here. What they're trying to do is say, Dan, what's important to you? What's working? Where are your fears and concerns? What's the pain at the moment? How can I help? And those sorts of things, because even if they don't know the answer, they can put me in touch with someone who does. And those sorts of human skills build out of the digital landscape now. So I would suggest that's probably if we could develop anything and we can recruit younger people into the profession, it's bringing those skills with them.
I think Dan, we're in an interesting position with the accounting industry from a sales perspective, and in that very few can say, hey, I'm selling, but you can't identify that return on investment. And really, if we're doing a good job as an accounting firm, your client looks back and says, yeah, I paid the firm X, but I got 2 or 3 times back later. And it's when you understand that that's the impact you have in the business, you don't have to worry about selling. You just have to worry about, how do we help this client reach their goals bigger, faster, stronger? And putting that focus on kind of takes some of that pressure of the sales off, because you're not trying to trick them. I think sometimes we associate, why is sales a dirty word in some ways? Because we've all bought something that later we regret. We're like, oh man, that person tricked me. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, it's such a bad decision. And you don't want to be on the other side of that. But that's not what this is. This is truly about helping them achieve what they're already trying to achieve. I think that's the great thing about being in the accounting profession.
I'm so with you on that, Will. I think I'd love to clean the word sales up, but I'm not going to achieve that in a 5-minute conversation here. So I'll leave it to the side because it's a blocker for so many people. But you're right. It's where's my integrity in quote unquote selling to somebody or helping them? Because if I've got good integrity with that, I'm going to try and get it. I'm not going to trick them, because you're right. We've all had those bad experiences, or something in the small print that they hid from us and all the rest of it. But actually, if my integrity is strong, I'm going to want to find out where they're at. And if I can then evidence what's happened, so this is where a lot of value-based pricing conversations come from in the profession. As you say, if I'm paying you $5,000 a year as my accountant, but you've saved me $20,000 in tax, and you've helped me to increase profit by 2% because you put certain processes in place and highlighted things and helped me focus on the decisions I need to make as a business owner, well, that's massive. That $5,000 is nothing. But we don't report that stuff. We don't hold on to those sorts of things. And we ought to, because we shy away from it for some reason. But that's the sort of stuff that as someone paying the bill, I want to know about. Yeah, that's really encouraging, because I can miss it sometimes as well, because we're all busy. But when it's shown to me, it's really encouraging.
Yeah, and I think that's where private equity is so attracted to this profession, because they are the most trusted advisors out there. They sell through to small and medium-sized businesses, and they see the opportunity to implement technologies potentially to those small and medium-sized businesses and provide huge value to clients. So I think the profession, there's so much opportunity out there to really grow, be more value oriented, and help out your small and medium-sized business and clients out there to grow.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the other things that private equity will most likely end up doing, almost certainly end up doing, is looking at the EBITDA in firms. There's so many firms that aren't as profitable as they should be because they're not being run as businesses. And what the private equity will do is building on what you were just saying there, Rory. I think is say, well, if we do those things and some other stuff, we can really make the EBITDA in what is a gross recurring fee profession with low attrition normally. We can then drive that EBITDA, which of course to private equity makes the world of difference. And I think if firms, going back to something you said earlier, Will, even if they're not interested in the PE approach, if they look at their own house and go, well, how do I make myself more profitable? How do I focus on my EBITDA? How do I make sure that that's growing and it's not just the top line revenue that I've got with a very small margin?
Great. Will, do you have any other questions for Dan?
No, but I have enjoyed the conversation, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Dan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, guys. It's been great to chat. It's been a very interesting half hour of batting stuff around. So yeah, thank you very much for having me involved.
Yeah, we covered a number of topics. Will, thank you so much for joining me. Dan, we hope to have you again back on in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great to do. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
All opinions expressed by Rob Santos and Rory Henry on this website podcast interview are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arrowroot Family Office LLC or their parent company or affiliates, and may have been previously disseminated on television, radio, internet, or another medium. You should not treat any opinion expressed by anyone as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their opinions. Past performance is not indicative of future results.